Listen, when most people think about black wealth in America, they've got it all wrong. They're thinking about athletes, entertainers, maybe a tech entrepreneur or two who made headlines. But that's not where the real story is. The real story is happening in places most people have never heard of, in suburban neighborhoods that don't make the news, among professionals who wake up every morning, put on their business attire, and build generational wealth the old-fashioned way, through discipline, education, and strategic decisions that compound over decades. I'm talking about a hidden geography of black prosperity that exists right under our noses, yet remains largely invisible in mainstream conversations about race and wealth in America. We're talking about communities where the median household income exceeds 6 figures, where homeownership rates rival or exceed national averages, and where professional credentials are so dense you can't throw a stone without hitting someone with an advanced degree. This isn't a fairy tale. This isn't about pretending systemic inequalities don't exist or ignoring the very real wealth gap that persists between black and white Americans. But it's also not the complete picture that gets painted in most discussions about black economic life. There's a thriving, sophisticated, and deeply rooted black middle and upper middle class in this country that has built substantial wealth through professional achievement, strategic real estate decisions, and community organization. And if we're serious about understanding economic mobility and wealth building in black America, we need to understand how these communities formed, how they function, and what lessons they might offer. The traditional narrative goes something like this. Black Americans, because of centuries of slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, and ongoing discrimination, have been systematically excluded from wealth-building opportunities. This is absolutely true. The wealth gap between black and white families in America is staggering and persistent. But here's what that narrative often misses. Within that reality, there have always been black communities that found ways to build wealth, pass it down, and create ecosystems of prosperity. These communities didn't emerge by accident. They were built through intentional choices about where to live, what professions to pursue, how to organize economically, and how to leverage collective resources. What I'm going to walk you through in this exploration is the real story of black wealth in America, not the celebrity version, not the "we've overcome and everything is fine now" version, but the actual on-the-ground reality of how black professionals have created zones of prosperity, particularly in specific geographic corridors that have become engines of black wealth accumulation. We're going to talk about places like Prince George's County in Maryland, DeKalb County in Georgia, and parts of the Research Triangle in North Carolina. We're going to explore how federal employment, corporate careers, and educational attainment have created a professional black middle class with real economic power. And we're going to examine how strategic migration patterns, particularly from the South to specific suburban areas, have concentrated black wealth in ways that create momentum and opportunity. This is a story about doctors and lawyers, yes, but also about federal employees who leveraged stable government careers into home ownership and retirement security. It's about engineers and accountants, healthcare administrators, and IT professionals. It's about people who made strategic decisions about where to buy homes in the 1970s and 1980s that have paid off dramatically. It's about communities that organized themselves to create local economic ecosystems where black professionals could thrive, support each other's businesses, and build institutional wealth. The scope of what we're discussing here is substantial. We're looking at communities where household wealth often exceeds several $100,000, where home ownership rates reach 70 to 80%, and where educational attainment includes not just bachelor's degrees, but master's degrees, doctorates, and professional credentials in law, medicine, and business. This isn't a small phenomenon. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of households across multiple metropolitan areas. Now, I want to be crystal clear about something before we dive deeper. Discussing black wealth and success is not the same as saying systemic racism is over or that the playing field is level. It's not. The wealth gap is real, ongoing, and a moral crisis. But understanding how some black communities have achieved substantial economic success despite these barriers is crucial for several reasons. First, it challenges simplistic narratives that treat all Black Americans as economically monolithic. Second, it reveals specific strategies and conditions that have enabled wealth building, which might inform policy and individual decision-making. Third, it respects the agency, intelligence, and hard work of Black professionals who have built these communities. What we're going to explore is fundamentally about geography, migration, professional choices, and institutional relationships. It's about understanding why certain suburbs of Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and other cities have become centers of Black wealth. It's about tracing migration patterns that brought educated Black professionals from across the South to specific metropolitan areas. It's about understanding how proximity to stable employment, particularly federal government jobs, created conditions for wealth accumulation. And it's about recognizing how these communities have developed their own internal economic structures that reinforce and compound prosperity. The data behind what I'm describing is robust. We have census information, housing price data, educational attainment statistics, and income figures that paint a clear picture. Places like Woodmore, Maryland, or Cascade Heights in Atlanta aren't statistical anomalies. They're substantial communities with thousands of residents and billions of dollars in collective wealth. When you look at median home values exceeding $500,000 or $600,000 in predominantly Black neighborhoods, when you see household incomes routinely exceeding $100,000 or $150,000, you're looking at real, sustained prosperity. This exploration is going to challenge you, regardless of your preconceptions. If you believe Black Americans are uniformly struggling economically, the data will surprise you. If you believe America is a perfect meritocracy where hard work always pays off regardless of race, the historical context of how these communities formed, often in response to exclusion and discrimination, will complicate that picture. The truth is nuanced, complex, and ultimately more interesting than either simplistic narrative. We're going to move through this systematically. First, we'll establish the hidden geography, where these wealth centers actually are and what they look like. Then we'll break down the stereotypes and examine the reality of how wealth is actually built in these communities. We'll trace migration patterns and their economic impacts. We'll look at specific regions, particularly the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic corridors that have been so crucial. And we'll dive deep into specific examples, with Maryland serving as perhaps the most dramatic case study of concentrated Black wealth in America. By the end of this journey, you're going to understand something that most people, including many policymakers, journalists, and even academics, miss about Black America. There's a sophisticated, wealth-building, multi-generational professional class that has created zones of prosperity through strategic choices, mutual support, and disciplined focus on education and career advancement. This isn't the whole story of Black America, but it's an essential part of the story that deserves to be understood on its own terms. So let's begin by mapping out exactly where this hidden wealth geography exists and what it looks like on the ground. Development, mapping the hidden geography, and understanding its formation. The hidden geography of Black wealth. All right, let's get specific about where we're actually talking about. When I say there's a hidden geography of Black wealth in America, I'm not being metaphorical. I mean, there are actual places, specific counties and neighborhoods, where Black household wealth is concentrated in ways that would surprise most Americans. Start with Prince George's County, Maryland. This is the wealthiest, predominantly Black county in the entire United States. Let me say that again because it's important. The wealthiest, predominantly Black county in America. We're talking about a jurisdiction with over 900,000 residents, where Black Americans make up about 62% of the population, and where the median household income exceeds $80,000. But those aggregate numbers actually undersell what's happening in specific neighborhoods within the county. In communities like Woodmore, Mitchellville, and Fort Washington, median household incomes soar past $100,000, often reaching $150,000 or higher. Home values in these areas routinely exceed $500,000, and in some enclaves, median home values approach or exceed $700,000. Then you've got DeKalb County, Georgia, just outside Atlanta. This has become another major center of black wealth, particularly in areas like Lithonia, Stone Mountain, and parts of South DeKalb. The Atlanta metropolitan area more broadly has become known as a hub for black professionals, with neighborhoods like Cascade Heights developing reputations as centers of black affluence. We're talking about tree-lined streets with substantial homes, where the residents are partners at law firms, senior executives at Fortune 500 companies, physicians, and successful entrepreneurs. The Research Triangle area in North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, has emerged as another significant center. The concentration of universities and research institutions, along with pharmaceutical and tech companies, has created opportunities for black professionals that have translated into wealth accumulation. Neighborhoods in Durham and parts of Raleigh have seen substantial black wealth development. But it's not just the South and Mid-Atlantic. Parts of suburban Detroit, particularly in Oakland County, have affluent black enclaves. The Chicago suburbs, especially areas in the South suburbs, have pockets of significant black wealth. Even in California, certain neighborhoods in the Los Angeles area and parts of the Bay Area have concentrations of wealthy black households, though the cost of living there makes the picture more complex. What's striking about these geographies is that they're often invisible in mainstream discussions. When people talk about wealthy suburbs, they're usually thinking about predominantly white areas, the Main Lines and Westchesters and Palo Altos of the world. But these black wealth centers exist in parallel, often just a few miles away, yet they're rarely featured in media representations or even academic studies of American prosperity. The other crucial point about this geography is that it's not random. These aren't just places where wealthy black individuals happen to have ended up. They're the result of deliberate migration patterns, strategic choices about where to purchase homes, and community formation that reinforced itself over time. Black professionals moved to these areas specifically because other black professionals were there, creating what economists call agglomeration effects, the benefits that come from concentration and proximity, shattering the stereotypes, the reality of professional wealth building. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, stereotypes about black wealth. When black wealth makes it into popular consciousness at all, it's usually framed in very specific ways. You've got the entertainer narrative, the rapper, the athlete, the actor who made it big. You've got the tech entrepreneur story, which has become more common in recent years. And you've got what I call the exceptional individual framing, where success is presented as so unusual that it requires a full documentary to explain. But here's the reality that these stereotypes obscure. The foundation of black wealth in America, where it exists at substantial scale, is built on the same boring stuff that builds most middle and upper middle class wealth in this country. It's built on professional careers, decades of them. It's built on home ownership in appreciating markets. It's built on employer-sponsored retirement accounts that compound over 30 or 40 years. It's built on educational credentials that open doors to stable, well-compensated employment. In Prince George's County, when researchers have analyzed the composition of the wealthy black population, here's what they find. The plurality are federal government employees or contractors. We're talking about people who work for the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, NASA. These aren't flashy careers. They're GS-13s and GS-14s and GS-15s who spent 30 years moving up through the civil service ranks, maxing out their thrift savings plan contributions, and buying homes in the 1980s and 1990s that have since appreciated dramatically. Then you've got the corporate professionals, the accountants at Booz Allen Hamilton, the consultants at Deloitte, the IT managers at Northrop Grumman, the project managers at major healthcare systems. You've got lawyers, yes, but more often they're lawyers working in corporate legal departments or as government attorneys than partners at white shoe firms. You've got physicians, but they're frequently working as hospitalists or in group practices rather than running their own private practices. What I'm describing is a professional middle class that built wealth through discipline and consistency rather than windfalls. They're people who understood that a federal job meant stability, meant a pension, meant benefits that would carry them through retirement. They understood that buying a home in a community with good schools meant their children would have educational advantages. They understood that staying in careers long enough to vest in retirement accounts and maximize employer matches would pay off decades later. The stereotype-busting reality is that this wealth is actually more stable and sustainable than the entertainment and sports wealth that gets so much attention. An NFL player might make $5 million in a 3-year career, but if that money isn't managed well, it's gone. A federal employee making $95,000 a year for 35 years, who bought a house for $180,000 in 1988 that's now worth $550,000, who maxed out their TSP and has $1.2 million in retirement savings, who will receive a federal pension of $50,000 a year for life. That person has built generational wealth. And when you multiply that across thousands of households in the same county, you're talking about billions of dollars in collective wealth. This is also fundamentally different from the narrative of black wealth that focuses solely on entrepreneurship. Don't get me wrong, black entrepreneurship is crucial and has a proud history. But the reality is that for most Americans, black or white, stable wealth is built through employment, not business ownership. The black professional class understood this and made strategic career choices accordingly. What's particularly interesting is how these professionals leverage their positions to create stability for the next generation. They weren't just building wealth for themselves, they were creating platforms for their children. When you grow up in a household where both parents have graduate degrees and 6-figure incomes, where the dinner table conversation includes discussions about investment strategies and college financing, where you're surrounded by neighbors who are also professionals, your baseline expectations and opportunities are dramatically different. Professional discipline and the long game of wealth building. Let me dig deeper into what I mean by professional discipline, because this is really the core of how wealth gets built in these communities. We're talking about people who made unglamorous choices consistently over very long periods of time. This isn't sexy. It's not going to be the subject of an HBO documentary, but it's how real wealth actually accumulates for most people. Think about the career trajectory of a typical wealthy black household in Prince George's County. Maybe it's a couple who met at Howard University or Hampton or Spelman in the early 1980s. He majored in engineering. She majored in biology. After graduation, he gets hired by the Naval Research Laboratory. She goes to pharmacy school, finishes in 1985, and gets hired by the Veterans Administration. By 1987, they're married. Combined income, $65,000, which in 1987 is solid middle class, especially with federal benefits. They buy their first house in 1989 in Prince George's County, a modest 3-bedroom for $135,000. Interest rates are high, but they're building equity. They have their first child in 1990, second in 1993. She takes advantage of the federal parental leave policies. He's moving up through the ranks at NRL, getting regular step increases. By 1995, he's making $72,000. She's making $68,000. Combined household income, $140,000. The house they bought for $135,000 is now worth $185,000. They're maxing out their thrift savings plans. Every paycheck, 10% goes straight into the TSP. Their agencies are matching. The money is going into a diversified fund, capturing the stock market growth of the 1990s. They're not actively managing this. It's just automatically deducted and invested. By 2000, They each have about $120,000 in their TSPs. The house is now worth $245,000. They've got about $100,000 in equity. The 2000s bring the continuation of steady employment. The federal government doesn't do layoffs the way the private sector does. They both keep working. Their TSPs take a hit in 2008 to 2009, but they don't panic sell. They keep contributing. By 2010, they're in their early 50s. His salary is now $105,000. Hers is $98,000. The house, even after the recession, is worth $320,000. They refinance to a lower rate and start paying extra on the principal. By 2015, they're thinking about retirement. Their TSPs have recovered and grown. He's got about $650,000. She's got about $580,000. The house is worth $420,000, and they only owe $110,000. Their son graduated from Penn State. They helped, but he also had some scholarship money and took out modest loans. Their daughter is at Maryland. They're both looking at retiring at 62 with full federal pensions. His will be about $48,000 a year. Hers about $44,000 a year, plus Social Security, plus the TSP money can be drawn down gradually. You see what happened here? Nothing dramatic. No entrepreneurial breakthrough. No inheritance. No lottery ticket. Just two people who got educated, got stable professional jobs, bought a house in an appreciating market, consistently saved in their retirement accounts, and stayed employed for 30-plus years. And the result? They're heading into retirement with about $1.5 million in net worth. TSPs plus home equity. Their kids got through college without crushing debt. They're positioned to leave their children a paid-off house and whatever's left of their retirement savings. Multiply this scenario by tens of thousands of households, and you start to understand the wealth geography we're talking about. This is the boring reality of how black wealth actually gets built at scale. And crucially, it's a model that's replicable. You don't need to be exceptional. You need to be disciplined. You need access to stable employment with good benefits. You need to buy a house in a market that appreciates. You need to stay the course. The professional discipline aspect can't be overstated. These are people who understood delayed gratification. They could have bought fancier cars or taken more expensive vacations or moved to bigger houses sooner. But they understood the math of compound interest. They understood that every dollar in the TSP in 1995 would be worth $5 or $6 by 2015. They understood that paying down the mortgage meant building equity that would eventually be fully theirs. Migration, home ownership, and regional organization. Now let's talk about how these communities actually formed, because understanding the migration patterns is crucial to understanding the wealth accumulation. This didn't happen randomly. It's the result of specific historical movements of black professionals from certain areas to certain other areas, and the timing of these movements in relation to housing markets and employment opportunities matters enormously. The Great Migration is well known, the movement of black Americans from the rural South to northern and western cities from roughly 1916 to 1970. But there was another migration pattern that's less discussed, but equally important for understanding black wealth. The movement of educated black professionals to specific suburban corridors, particularly around Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and other metropolitan areas from the 1970s onward. Here's how it worked. By the 1960s and 1970s, thanks to the civil rights movement, desegregation of universities, and anti-discrimination laws, you had a growing number of black Americans getting college degrees and professional credentials. These folks needed employment. The federal government, partly due to affirmative action policies, but also because it was a large employer that offered stability and relatively meritocratic advancement, became a major employer of black professionals. Washington, D.C., and its suburbs naturally became a magnet. At the same time, defense contractors, federal agencies, and other organizations were expanding in the Maryland and Virginia suburbs around D.C. Black professionals, many of them from southern states, many of them first-generation college graduates, moved to the area for these opportunities. Initially, many settled in Washington, D.C. proper. But as they accumulated resources and started families, they faced a choice: where to buy a home. Prince George's County became a prime destination for several reasons. First, it was more affordable than parts of Northern Virginia or Montgomery County, Maryland. Second, and this is crucial, it was developing a reputation as a place where Black professionals could live without facing the kind of racial hostility they might encounter in whiter suburbs. Fair housing laws were on the books, but social realities were another matter. Black professionals wanted to live somewhere they'd be welcome, where their kids would fit in, where they wouldn't be the only Black family on the block. As more Black professionals moved to Prince George's County, it created a self-reinforcing cycle. The community attracted more Black professionals, which meant more Black-owned businesses, Black churches, Black social organizations. The critical mass meant that the community could support a full ecosystem. You had Black doctors, Black lawyers, Black accountants, Black real estate agents, all serving and supporting each other. The homeownership component is essential to understanding the wealth accumulation. These professionals were buying homes in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s in a market that was about to appreciate significantly. Someone who bought a home in Prince George's County in 1982 for $95,000 might have seen that home worth $400,000 or $500,000 by 2015. That's not just housing, that's wealth accumulation. And crucially, it's wealth that can be passed to the next generation. Similar patterns played out in Atlanta, as the city positioned itself as the capital of the New South and attracted major corporations and institutions. Black professionals moved there from across the South. DeKalb County and certain Atlanta neighborhoods became centers of Black wealth for the same reasons Prince George's County did in D.C. Affordability combined with critical mass of Black professionals created communities where people wanted to live and invest. The regional organization aspect is also fascinating. These communities didn't just exist, they organized themselves. They created homeowners associations, business networks, social clubs, and civic organizations. They invested in their schools, fought for resources, and created institutional structures that reinforced community stability. This wasn't accidental. It was deliberate community building by people who understood that their collective success depended on organization and mutual support.